We're talking about food and love and generational farming and ranchers. Well, then I need to introduce you to the Ralston family farms of north central Arkansas and the beautiful Arkansas River Valley, where they are rice farmers, among other endeavors. This is a family, I hope you're sitting down, that has farmed for 10 generations now. The Ralstons are committed to growing and harvesting food for your family, just as they have done for theirs. Things like regenerative farming, that's a method where the farmers take a keen interest in the soil and water use and fertilizer. The water is from the nearby Arkansas River. Sustainable farming is another tenet of the Ralston family. The family only mills what they grow. They have full traceability from seed to carton. And of course, this is American made and they are non-GMO products. They have delicious rice in 6 core varieties, including white basmati and aromatic purple and red. Go to their website to see where you can get this outstanding line of a most delicious Arkansas product. RalstonFamilyFarms.com.
She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fischer Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fischer.
Okay, so here we are with the most, I'd say, recognizable guest on the Lisa Fischer Said podcast and the most anticipated guest, Ree Drummond. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with just news in your life and give us an update on your nephew and your husband and what could have been a catastrophic accident recently there on the ranch.
Oh gosh, thank you so much for asking about Caleb and Ladd. Yes, they were in an accident on March 10th. There was a wildfire on the ranch. It was an incredibly windy day, and it was just one of those chaotic situations that they've been in dozens of times, but just sort of a fluke accident, and their fire trucks collided, and they were both pretty seriously injured, but Ladd and Caleb are both doing great. Ladd fractured his neck in the accident, and it was one of those accidents that the doctor said, boy, oh boy, you know, if you had been an inch to one side or the other. But he's doing great. He's in a neck brace, which is bringing out some cowboy patience that he didn't know he had. And my nephew Caleb is doing great too. He broke a couple of ribs and had a couple little injuries, but when you compare, you know, what could have happened and how different today would look, we're just so grateful. So thank you so much for asking.
I think people need to realize that you don't live a Kardashian lifestyle where people are sitting around being fed grapes and having your makeup done all the time, that you live on an actual working ranch in Oklahoma, northeast Oklahoma, and taking care of Mustangs and all the other things you do, that it's a tough job.
Yeah, and you know, it is. I raised my children on this ranch doing a lot of the same things that my husband does every day, and every now and then you are reminded that it is, you know, it can be a dangerous situation. And it, you know, you just assume that everything will always go according to plan. And on that one day, it certainly didn't. We didn't expect that to happen at all, but it's good that when something turns out so much better than it could have been, that all it does is make you grateful. So while my husband would prefer not to be in a neck brace for the next 3 months, he certainly is mindful of, you know, how lucky he is not to have any long-lasting effects. So,
well, you've got something else on your calendar, and there's a wedding coming up, and so I guess you'll put Pioneer Woman fabric around the neck brace, and he'll look his best. So let's talk about the wedding. Your oldest child's getting married, and we've been able to follow that. This is so exciting. Tell us what you can.
So my daughter, my first child, Alex, is getting married. She is 23 years old. She'll be 24 in June, but she met her fiance at Texas A&M, which, you know, Aggies have a bond that most of us can't comprehend. And I guess that translates to dating life too, but they dated most of college. He is a really great guy. His name's Mauricio, and he's just really part of our family at this point. They got engaged last August, and the wedding is May 1st. So this is the first wedding in our family. It's going to be on the ranch, which I don't know what I was thinking, but we're having an outdoor wedding in northeastern Oklahoma on May 1st. What could go wrong?
I think there are tornadoes, there's winds, there's fires, but other than that, nothing can go wrong.
And the manure and the flies and all that.
Right.
But
right.
I think because so many things can go wrong, we've already surrendered to the process, and we've just decided it's going to be great no matter what. But we're so excited. And, I grew up telling my daughters, I have 2 daughters and 2 sons, but I grew up telling my daughters, do not get married until you're 28. This is best. This is best. And here I have a daughter who's 23 getting married, which just goes to show you that I don't know what I'm talking about. And but
I wrote the book on that. Yeah, I've got kids that do the exact opposite of anything I've told them. I should have used reverse psychology and had them do what I wanted them to do by telling them the opposite. So I botched that up, but I get it.
But what's more important is the right person, and
that's right.
He really is. They're just so great together. So very exciting.
And then the next one, Paige, we follow here in Arkansas because she's at the University of Arkansas. She's a Kappa Kappa Gamma, and we've got so many friends that are part of that great house and great sorority. Is she about to wrap up college?
She is actually a junior, so she has one more year. Yeah, and it seems like it's gone by so fast because her sophomore year, of course, was interrupted just as everyone's was last spring. And one day at the Kappa House at Arkansas, they said, you all have to move out, and not only move out, go home. And so half of her sophomore year was sort of interrupted. Now suddenly she's almost at the end of her junior year. So she loves Arkansas. And
good, great.
She actually applied to A&M and Arkansas, and I just assumed if she got into A&M, she'd head there in a second because her sister was there. Well, she got into A&M, but she wanted to go to Arkansas. So I think she wanted to blaze her own trail, and she felt a little bit kind of like Arkansas was her spot, and it has turned out to be such a great decision, and I applaud Paige. Sometimes I don't necessarily applaud her headstrong nature and decisiveness. Because sometimes I'm like, well, take a little time and think about this. She always knows exactly what she wants to do, and she was right.
What are the girls?
A great school.
It is a great school, and that's where my alma mater, of course, but it's almost a local college for you. It's not that far, whereas I'm sure where A&M is in, what city is that again?
College Station.
College Station. That's a little further for you from your area. What are their vocational interests, those girls?
Well, Paige is actually in the event planning, hospitality, nutrition world at Arkansas, and that she's good at it, and she has a sort of a spring and summer internship with an event planning company, but she's a pretty motivated person with fun ideas. She got the wrong mother because I've written about this before, but I am not a crafter, and I always felt when Paige was growing up like I was failing her because I didn't have glue guns, and right. we homeschooled in those days, and because of that, Paige was around other homeschooling families a lot, and it seems like the mothers always had these amazing craft rooms and craft areas in their homes, and I would always think, oh, I hope she doesn't go over to their house because Paige is going to see the world that's out there of crafting. But I'm terrible with things like that. But Paige, fortunately, surged on in spite of my deficit in that area. So she's in the area that she really wants to be. And Alex actually is working for her mother now in the world of the Pioneer Woman. So she's helping me with a lot of product development decisions for my Walmart housewares line, and helps me kind of stay on top of the pile that tends to accumulate because I'm a little scatterbrained. So it's great to have her under the PW umbrella right now.
And when we met in 2011, you were in Little Rock for Central Arkansas Library System does guest speakers for their library week. and we met and we bonded over homeschooling and lip gloss. So
Yes.
forever friends with that. So I was homeschooling at the same time. I homeschooled about 15 years, and I know you did for a pretty long time. And so then this was 10 years ago. Your boys were little, but now you have one playing college ball, right, at UNT. Is that correct?
Yes. So the homeschooling was a definite specific part of my life, and I'm so glad we did it. The boys wound up going to school in Pahuska, starting about ninth grade. We were homeschooling, and then we kind of were half in, half out, but their passion is sports and specifically football. And we just really thought that it was time for us to kind of cross over into the real school world. And so they're both quarterbacks, and Bryce, my older son, is now a quarterback at University of North Texas. So he started
awesome.
a semester early, so he's kind of a young freshman at this point. But we just kind of shoved him out the door, and suddenly he started school in January. And I kept calling him, saying, "Now, do you know how to do this?" And
Right.
the answer was no in most cases, but he's totally adapted. And Todd, my youngest, is only a sophomore in high school, so I still have him for a couple of years.
And then you have a foster child. That's one of our connections then today, since we're raising money here at my house for our local Second Chance Youth Ranch. Tell us about how you got connected in the foster care system of Oklahoma.
Yes, Jamar is our foster son, and he has been with our family for about a year and a half. He is 18. He's technically aged out of the system, but he's now at this point he's a part of our family. But it wasn't the type of situation where Ladd and I felt called or made any sort of decision to become foster parents or pursue that, but it was definitely situational, and the circumstances presented themselves to us, and we wound up deciding together to bring Jamar into our family, and there's been no going back. We've had a very concentrated year and a half with Jamar, and it's been wonderful, and I can't. Honestly, I've heard a lot of foster parents say this, but it's hard to remember life before Jamar. First of all, he's almost 6'6". He's very tall. He's 6'5", and just a big, strong guy. And so he's a large presence in many ways. But he has fit into our family really nicely. He and Bryce are the same age, so my boys. This has been as much my boys' experience as it has been Ladd and me, and because they go to school together and football and everything. So it's kind of been nice, because once Bryce left for college in January, it has really shown me how much of a supportive, tender relationship he and Todd have. So he and my younger son. So they're kind of bros, and they're not. Bryce and Jamar were more equals, and so they had sort of the natural head-butting situations that any two siblings of the same age would have. Whereas Todd and Jamar just kind of hang and enjoy each other.
Now, did you put Jamar to work? Because I saw your other kids were part of your production crew during the height of COVID. I don't know what the situation is now, but your kids were your film crew, your boom mic, your sound, probably edited, did everything. Did Jamar get to work too?
Well, interestingly, when COVID started happening, my regular television crew for my Food Network show is from London. And so they have not been back to the States since February of 2020. We wanted the show to go on, so they have actually had a remote producing role and facilitated my children being the camera crew. So in my case, it was my older children, Alex Page, Alex's now fiance Mauricio, and then my nephew Stuart. So the four of those kids came and just hopped into the roles of cameramen and women. but the boys still had some school, some football, and so they never really became part of the crew. And at the same time, until October of 2020, Jamar was 17. So we weren't permitted to mention him publicly. Right. And I wanted to take our time anyway and give Jamar plenty of opportunity to kind of tell his own story and have control of his own narrative and not just blast it out there on my social media. So it was nice to kind of have that time to just become a family, and before we started, telling everybody about it. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's a great way to present that it's his story too to tell. So you have to be respectful of that. Well, let's go back. I loved your book, your Black Heels and Tractor Wheels, your love story with Ladd. And, this is the little girl who grew up on the golf course in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, who now is the queen of flowy blouses and casseroles with a lot of cheese and Ritz crackers and all the good things. Part of your story in that book was that you were going to go to law school. You were an SC graduate. I remember you'd studied journalism a little bit, but maybe didn't finish there. Did you ever see yourself in this place? Did young Ree see herself as grown-up Ree as doing this, of having, America's sweetheart, all the things that you do? Did you ever picture this for yourself?
No. In a word.
Right.
Absolutely not. So there's so many aspects of, where I am now in my life that I never could have ever predicted. I'll name just a handful. Living in Oklahoma wasn't something that, I saw for myself when I was growing up in Bartlesville. To me, Bartlesville, Oklahoma was a tiny town. It was 35,000 people. And so that's part of why I went to school in Los Angeles. And now that's a big enough town for me, Los Angeles. But then here I am, not only in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, which is a town of 3,500, but I'm west of Pawhuska. I don't even live in town. So that was one thing. Marrying a man who basically is a cowboy / rancher and wears Wranglers and mud on a daily basis. And, I liked preppy, cute Catholic boys and, surfers and kind of the guys who played in the band in high school. And so anyway, so that's another, of course we love who we love. So that's understandable. Another thing that I've been surprised by through the years is just being a businesswoman. That isn't, when I first moved to Pawhuska and started getting a group of friends in town, we all got together a few years in and decided to start an investment club. Back then it was, investment clubs were sort of a thing, and we'd get together and talk about, Tommy Hilfiger and Amazon. I sure wish we would have bought more Amazon back then. This was like right. 1999, 2000. But I forgot where I was going. But I wound up being the treasurer of our investment club, and I mentioned it casually to my dad, and he was like, "What? You're the treasurer?" So I was not a business person ever in my life, but that it that I now consider myself a businesswoman has been sort of a surprise. And just, of course, being on TV is not something I ever saw for myself either. I started out taking still photos of the food I was cooking. I was a food blogger. I wasn't on camera, not even in my own pictures. So that's another thing. So basically, make plans in life, have an idea of where your life is going to go, and then God will laugh at you and send you in a completely different direction.
I think everyone can agree with that. Everyone's nodding, listening right now on their device or watching this on YouTube going, yes, because we've all been there. And it's same thing, like I said, about the raising the kids. The things that you think are good, it's a good fit for them, they're like, no, it's not. And they're always right. I mean, your kids are right, just as we were right for the direction of our lives.
Life turns out to be right somehow.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. As far as cooking, so you're just really the girl who started, well, because I remember in your book, you said you may have been a vegan or vegetarian when you met Lad, who is the king of all cattle. I mean, consumes all beef products. So you had to kind of change. Were you then cooking then as a vegan or vegetarian? Were you trying out recipes then? Or was it until you went to the ranch where you thought, well, gosh, I got a lot of butter and milk here. I need to do something with it.
Well, I was a vegetarian. I was never a vegan, but I was a vegetarian during my years in California. I obviously did not have much behind my convictions there because when I was dating Lad, he made me a steak, cooked in sizzling butter, and I took a bite and it was all over. So I don't think I respect vegetarians and have no problem with that way of life, but I didn't have the courage of my convictions, let's just say. But yes, I mean, when I start talking about steak cooked in sizzling butter, my eyes roll back in my head. So
that sounds so good right now.
In terms of cooking, I have always loved to cook. My mom was a very, very good home cook. And I always chose the cooking track instead of the sewing. As this goes back to the fact that I can't craft and I don't have a glue gun. I never took the sewing classes. I always took the cooking classes. And cooked for myself in California. Certainly not butter and cream and beef when I was in California, but definitely was already in the frame of mind that I love to cook. So when I moved to the ranch, that was put to the test because we live, a distance from our small town. And while there was a Pizza Hut and a couple of other to-go fast food options, it certainly wasn't anything that could sustain us. Now, if I lived in a city, I would be dangerous with DoorDash. I mean, I love a hotel room because of room service. I like to call and just food arrives on my door. Right. So if I had been married in a civilization early on, I probably wouldn't have a Food Network show because I wouldn't have ever had to cook. But when I moved out here, it was real. Like if you want to eat, you have to cook what you eat. And I didn't feel right about asking Lad to do all the cooking because he was out, working all day early in our marriage. So it was kind of necessity. And then it became kind of fun. Like I've got to crack the code here with this cowboy palate and this, because they are a picky people, cowboys, and finding the things. Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, and haven't all of our cooking skills kind of been a metamorphosis through the years? So what you started was one thing, maybe it was just beef, butter, and cream. And I'm just wondering, through the years, has his palate changed? Has your repertoire gotten bigger?
Definitely has. It got bigger with kids because I was able to kind of get through to them at an earlier stage with trying new flavors and things. I think Lad's mom at a certain point just gave up with, she just got into a rotation because she raised 3 sons in the country and a husband. She raised a husband. And so she was an amazing cook too, though. And I took a lot of my cues from her. She was very good at cooking very large quantities of food. She grew up on a big ranch and farm and cooked for harvest and cooked for cowboys. So I learned so much from both my mother-in-law and my mother, who were both good cooks in totally different ways. But yeah, Lad and in terms of his repertoire, it's kind of staggering how little it has expanded through the years. I'll sneak in a few things here and there, but he's no more inclined to eat creamed spinach or like burgundy mushrooms or things like that now than he was in 1996.
Oh, and your burgundy mushrooms are one of my favorites.
Oh gosh, they're so good. They're just amazing.
You cook them down all day. It's what every Christmas my family asks for, and the bottle of wine. See, you have to buy a bottle of wine.
Exactly.
And I think
Not
you
an
use just about the whole bottle of wine and all
pour the whole thing.
and the button mushrooms, and it just cooks down all day. So I'm sorry that he's not eating that, but it's really better for the rest of you, because the thing is, when you live out like you do and you run out of mushrooms, you just can't run next door and get some more mushrooms. So it probably works out for you, which brings me to the Dr. Pepper pork roast, the pork shoulder butt that you said you felt like a 16-year-old boy when you said it was a butt.
Pork
butt. So I read that wrong the first time because I'd never cooked with chipotle peppers. I thought you said 2 to 3 cans. No, it's 2 to 3 peppers. And we were breathing fire. No one could eat it. I mean, I hate tossing out a good piece of meat. Other than that, I even thought about rinsing it, but it was in the fiber of that pork. So anyone listening, she does the Dr. Pepper. You get a can of Dr. Pepper, and you get 2 to 3 chipotle peppers, not cans.
You are actually the second person that has told me that happened. So you're
Seriously?
not alone, Lisa Fischer. That has happened.
Good.
I cannot imagine how hot that was, because I have walked on the wild side and dumped 1 can in before, and it is almost unable to be eaten because it's so spicy.
Yeah. No. Yeah, and I think I did 2 cans because I thought I'll just save that third one because she said 2 to 3. No, peppers. Back to peppers.
Oh, well, I have 2 stories like that in my own cooking history. So, again, I love to cook, and even in high school, I loved to just cook. And so I found a recipe for veggie lasagna back in, this would have been 1986. I'm so good with years because I go by who I was married to, nursing, or pregnant with, or dating. So I remember I made this veggie lasagna with my high school boyfriend, and I thought it said it was 1/4 a cup of chopped parsley, and back then it was the curly parsley, of course. 1/4 a cup, and I thought it said 4 cups of chopped parsley. Wow. So I actually went back to the store because I realized once I started chopping that I didn't have enough parsley. So, boy, that lasagna was terrible.
And in your teeth. I mean, it would be everywhere. Because, a little bit of parsley goes a long way. Well, my boiled noodle debacle conundrum was the first time I didn't know how to cook when I got married. I just made a lot of mistakes. I had the manicotti, and I didn't know you had to boil it before you put the red sauce and the meat and the marinara in it. So I just stuffed them in there and put them in the oven, and it was like eating cans. So I have a lot of
misses. These are all
misses.
character building experiences, and they're part of our formation, and we wouldn't be the women we are today if we hadn't done those things.
That's right. But I tried to make cooking seem like something that, heroic men and women do. And I remember one time my daughter, in fact, it was a Pioneer Woman recipe because I thought she can do this. And when I got back, she had the whole dinner made. And I said, well, how did that happen? She goes, Mom, everyone makes cooking sound hard. If you can read, you can cook. I go, Don't belittle me that way. I go, it's a lot harder than it looks most of the time.
I feel targeted.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I thought, but it's true. That's how I try to encourage people. If you can read, you can follow the steps, and you can cook. So what are you working on now? You have another book project in the midst?
I am just finishing up my next cookbook, and it'll be out in October. So I got a wild hair and started this one early for a change. By early, I mean on time.
Right.
To me, deadlines are just suggestions. It's how I'm wired. And also there's the pressure because of COVID. There are a lot of printing delays and printing backups. And so I was told in no uncertain terms by my editor, who's been my editor since my very first cookbook. And I can't imagine working with anybody else. But she said, so we have to get this done by the end of March, or we're probably going to have to move the date to 2022. And so I knew then they were serious, because usually it's just like, is that here yet? Is that here yet? And I was like, oh, another day or two. But this time I started early. It's almost finished, and I'm so happy with it. It reflects my cooking life over the past year plus. It's called Super Easy.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. We're going to take a break right here, come back with the Pioneer Woman in part 2, so stay tuned. Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fischer Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fischer Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.